Spirit guides. Who's got them? Everybody. Everybody has a spirit guide. That's literally like asking if you have a parent. Yes, everyone has a parent, has parents. They came from somewhere, and just as equally, everyone has a spirit guide. My personal experiences have led me to believe that we all have multiple spirit guides. And I'll say that there's not anyone that I haven't, connected with that hasn't had at least 3 or 4 spirit guides. Your spirit guide can be a family member that's passed away in this lifetime. It could be a family member from a previous incarnation. It can be a pet. It could be an animal. It can be an elemental, like, like earth, wind, fire, fae, that kind of energy. It can be an ascended master. Usually these are more temporary. Or an angel. Again, and these are usually more temporary. And temporary, not like they're going to go away and never come back. And I'll go into that a little bit as we move on. But most importantly, and probably most frequently, the guide that you have throughout most of your life and that you are have the strongest connection with is usually going to be your higher self. Now, you may not recognize your spirit guide as your higher self, and this is normal. I know when I first started connecting to my spirit guide presented himself to me as a male named David. But the longer that I work with him and the closer that I get to him, I realize that he is my higher self. So just keep that in mind as you speak to your guides, that sometimes they will present themselves to you in different ways. Sometimes they will present themselves to you in a way that is familiar to you. And the reason why they do this is because they don't want to startle you. They don't want to scare you. They don't want you to not understand who they are, what they're coming from. So they're going to use things, say things, and do things that are really familiar to you. And if this means that they appear to you as your grandmother, then that's what they're going to do. Now, it could be that your spirit guide is actually your grandmother. But it could just be that it is a higher version of yourself and they present themselves to you this way so that you're comfortable and it's more logical for you to understand. You really just have to develop a relationship with your guides and continue communicating with them and talking to them, and then use discernment, and eventually these things start to unfold. Another example is I have a guide that I use specifically for spiritual connection. So I use this guide when I want to connect to the spirit realm, when I want to connect to spirit. My mediumship sessions, I connect to this guide. Well, when I first met this guide, he introduced himself to me as Magnus. Don't know Magnus. That name literally means nothing to me. Okay. So later on, after connecting with him more and more and more, I realized that he actually is my dad. My dad's name's Sam. No connection there at all. It was just getting familiar with the energy and then just going with my gut. And my gut just told me, like, this energy is the same energy as my dad. This is my dad's energy. And that brings me to another point. I guess this can be our next point. Is a lot of people will want to know their spirit guide's name. And that's great. Like, it makes sense. I understand why you want to know your spirit guide's name, what you want to call them. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you that that information is not really important, especially not to your guide or your spirit team, because spirit doesn't really value names like we do. They don't really think the same way that we do. They don't have an ego. They don't have a desire to be called something. That is really just a human thing. That is something that our ego drives. So if you ask your spirit guide for a name, they'll give you one. But I just want to point out that it's really not important. Like, it really doesn't matter. So with me, I would just ask, hey, what's your name? And the first name that comes to you is the name that you should start referring to your guide as. This may change throughout time. You may realize that this guide's energy is really like your dad's or like your mom's, or whatever, and that's okay. If you decide you don't want to call your guide the original name that they gave you just to appease your human brain, then that's fine too.